Today's episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast is brought to you by Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, athletes made here. The Sports Performance Center was developed with one goal in mind: to maximize human performance through movement and recovery. Their team of expert performance sports coaches and trainers will guide you to achieve your performance goals. That's the Baylor Scott & White Sports Performance Center, located at the Star in Frisco. This episode is also brought to you by Allen Dental Studio. Located off Bethany Drive in Allen, their office was designed with you, the patient, in mind, which means an excellent and enjoyable experience. From cosmetics to implants, you deserve a perfect smile, and Allen Dental Studio can make that happen. Also, don't want to leave out another longtime friend of the podcast, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. With locations in Carrollton and Dallas, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes offers an affordable, high-quality alternative to senior living. Call now at 469-400-7650. That's Texan, spelled T-E-X-S-E-N, Texan Senior Residential Care Homes. Welcome to another episode of the Star Local Media High School Sports Podcast. My name is Matt Welch, being joined by Bryan Murphy and Taylor Raglin. Gentlemen, week 2 of high school football season is in the books, and let's react. You know, with week 1, we always caution after week 1, you can only buy so much into what you see in week 1 because it's our first sight of what we see of these teams, and we don't know which trends, what showings are, the sign of things to come, what just might be, an isolated incident or whatnot. It's such a small sample size, we really don't know what to make of week 1. So, and granted, it's not like week 2 gives you that much more, but it's at least another look at kind of if there's any of these teams continued in a certain direction and whatnot. So, but let's try to kind of make heads and tails of where several of our schools are at. If you're playing in District 7-5A Division II right now, the tune-up games are done. District play starts this week because of the size of that district. They were only afforded 2 weeks of non-district play, so we can talk about a few of the teams getting ready for their respective district openers out that way, including Bryan, a game that you were at last week that was a very, very high-profile matchup in featuring the reigning district champion out of 7-5A D2, Frisco Reedy, in a rematch against District 5-5A Division I district champ, the Colony. A game that took on a very different overtone than last year's meeting. And now, as Reedy begins to prepare for its district title defense, they're doing so coming off of what had to be a very, very debilitating showing against the Cougars.
Now, is this a reaction or is this a freak out? Because I think it's a freak out.
I think you're panicking.
Are you sounding the panic alarm?
I think you're panicking. I mean,
you're hitting the panic button because this is looking like not quite as bad, but almost the Reedy team of 2 years ago. The team that only won 3 games. They're definitely not the 2018 Reedy Lions anymore. They only have one, offensive player that really starts and plays from last year's team, and it's Nate Anderson. But as good as he is, he can only do so much. When the rest of the offensive line is inexperienced, your quarterbacks are inexperienced. I'm kind of a little disappointed in what Jalen Kitna has or hasn't done so far to start the year. The offense just they look sloppy. They're at times they can't even line up right, and that's something Coach Cole was telling me after the game. He's like, we just need a guy that will lead and that can lead this offense into more than just wins and losses, but just doing the right stuff. Stuff that they took for granted, I guess, with Foskey and how good he was, and they had so many D1 guys all across the board last year. It's not the same team. They can't run the football. Granted, it was against the Colony. The Colony's
got a lot of talent.
Dang good.
Yeah.
That game had a lot to do with how good the Colony is.
Yeah, it's a mix of both. I think Reedy's taken that much of a step back, and the Colony's just that good. And Miles Price, dude, is just.
He had a quiet week 1, but man, did he make up for it in week 2.
And see, that was worrisome for the Colony because that a 24-2 game for most teams would be like, yeah, that's what a win. But for the Colony, it's like, why are you only scoring 24 points? And then Rangel even kind of brought that up, bouncing back the way they did after week 1, and they just exploded. They could have easily put up 80 points against. They called the dogs off in the second half, or midway through the third quarter. They kind of called the dogs off. They had 42 points at the half. It was 42-6 at halftime. And everyone's just kind of like, what is going on? Because if you would have played last year's Reedy team against this year's the Colony team, oh my gosh, that would have been one of the games of the year. And last year that was a good game. Reedy won that game 33-24, I believe. That game was at the Star. But man, Reedy, at this rate, they're not going to win the district championship.
with Reedy, they were the ultimate, like when you talk about what to make of a week one performance and what it means. I mean, we mentioned it last week when we saw that Reedy was trailing Plano West at the half 7-3, a Plano West team that hasn't won a football game in 2.5 years. And okay, well, what does this mean? Is this more about, hey, wow, Plano West might have a little something here, breaking in a new head coach and just kind of a new culture in general, or is this just a sign that Reedy, we kind of, I guess, underestimate the importance of that senior class last year and just how valuable those guys were, and this being the first true year that Reedy has lost a lot to graduation and then having to, kind of rebuild from that, which for a young program is still undetermined whether, just how sustainable what happened last year is. But yeah, as far as the early returns go, I mean, listen, the Colony is probably the best team that they're going to see in the regular season. So at least there is that. Like, I don't know if there's a team in the district schedule that's going to pose as big of a threat as the Colony, just because.
Not even close.
Yeah.
The talent level is just off the charts with the Colony. I think that's really the main thing.
So I don't know, I guess how much you want to buy into that relative to what it means for district play, just because, I mean, the Colony's probably going to do that same type of, have that same kind of an output against every other team in 7-5 AD too, to be fair. If you put Lake Dallas against the Colony or Lovejoy or Frisco or Brazzell, they're going to lose just as bad as Reedy did. So it's kind of hard to gauge. I mean, you have 3 Division I guys playing the same position, and then they throw them in the secondary, and Christian Gonzalez and Miles Price played almost 3 quarters at cornerback after scoring the first 2 touchdowns. That's Christian Gonzalez's primary position. He's committed to Purdue as a cornerback, and he's a 4-star talent at that position.
And he looks great on offense against Reedy. He scored 2 touchdowns.
They're so versatile, though.
Oh my gosh, Mikey Harrington.
Yes.
You have a 3-year starter at quarterback. People forget about him. He had 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Against Reedy, they're just absolutely loaded. Keith Miller, just throw it up to him, he'll get it. And one of Harrington's touchdowns to Keith Miller in the first half, literally, kind of over the shoulder. It was kind of, he just launched it up, and Miller just kind of adjusted, caught it, easy touchdown, in between 2 Reedy players. It's just hard to stop.
It was a surprise, admittedly, considering the stature of these 2 programs heading into last week's game, to see the entire picket line siding with the Colony. But it really does speak to kind of what we mentioned, just the experience that the Colony had and being a bit more fortified in their identity than a Reedy team that's still trying to figure out what it is.
We all picked the Colony to win, but I figured everyone would think that it'd be a lot closer.
No one thought this was going to be just an absolute beatdown. So Reedy's going to draw Lake Dallas in its district opener, and a Lake Dallas team that's also kind of trying to figure out what it is with its, they've been using 2 players at quarterback and whatnot, Brandon Engel and Trevor Moon, and they, a little bit, you saw the opener, Taylor, was a little bit up and down against Denton, but then they, head coach Michael Young had lauded the progress of his defense all throughout the offseason, saying it had a chance to be one of the better units that he's coached in his time at Lake Dallas, and at the very least, just to bounce back after giving up, 36 to Denton?
Yeah.
Then to shut out, Frisco Centennial team that's a little bit down, got to, at least keep that in perspective, but still to pitch a shutout has got to be at least encouraging for the progress of that unit.
Yeah, and 60 yards for Centennial. I mean, that's good no matter who you're playing. I mean, 60 yards is 60 yards for a defense to give up alongside a shutout. I think the main thing, they're going to draw Reedy. It's going to be a barometer early for both teams, coming out into this week 1 of 7-5A Division II, because for Reedy, it's a chance to maybe catch your breath a little bit and play a team that's not the Colony. But at the same time, Lake Dallas, they found kind of their stride a little bit with Trevor Moon. They can't keep Brandon Engel healthy, which I think is really unfortunate for that
he's
team.
Such a good player.
He's the best quarterback they have. He's the best receiver they have. He's the best athlete they have. Like he's
it's
just
one of those things where he throws it and then
he
he
might be
easily
able to do that.
when I was watching them play Denton when he was playing quarterback in the first half, that offense was 100% more explosive than I thought it was going to be, just because he's in there. If they get him back, that's a whole other dimension to this Lake Dallas Reedy game. That Reedy's going to have to prove that they can contain even someone like that. But if they don't, Trevor Moon was absolutely serviceable against Frisco Centennial. There's nothing wrong with his performance. I think he had 1 touchdown, 1 interception, like 180 yards, something like that. He can run that offense just fine. They have IK Nekwe back in the backfield. Man, that dude. The thing that always strikes me about him every time I watch him play is that he runs hard. Like he's one of those guys that he's up to full speed by the line of scrimmage every single time you hand him the football. He's not fun to have to tackle over and over and over again, especially in a year like this year when there's going to be games he probably gets 30 carries. So I mean, that's just kind of the nature of this team for Lake Dallas. But Yeah, a good bounce back for Lake Dallas. I think that loss to Denton in week 1 had a lot to do with week 1 sloppiness, penalties. I don't think that was a game that Lake Dallas feels like it should have lost. Having been at that game, I don't think they should have lost that football game, but they did. I mean, it's something to be said that they did, but obviously they've got some of that stuff cleaned up, and like I said, it's an early test upcoming. We think.
Let's talk a little bit about Frisco. Just a team that might be, we don't want to necessarily give away anything, but we're going to be making our district predictions this week with the start of 7-5A Division II, and Frisco, fresh off a very quality win over Melissa, one of the better programs, locally at least at the 4A level. And Frisco is 2-0 under first-year head coach Jeff Harbert, and could be poised. They're not going to be sneaking up on anybody this time around, but they're a team that I think, at least on your end, Brian, you've got some pretty high hopes for heading into district.
I think they are the lead horse, the lead dog in that district. No one in that district has proved themselves. If anything, they've all hurt their case. You just talked about how Lake Dallas, losing that game to Denton, that team that just lost 75-0 to Lone Star team. I'm sure we'll talk about here in a little bit. And so, Frisco pounded Woodrow Wilson in week 1. Maybe not too much to write about there, but last year, before they made that awesome turnaround during district, they had lost to Wilson in week 1. They'd lost to Melissa in week 2. They were 0-2 last year. This year they have so many horses in the stable. They run that wing T, but they have the personnel to really run it this year and throw the ball. They're airing the ball out a little bit more, and I think they threw it 7 times against Wilson. And you think, okay, they threw the ball 7 times. That's not a lot. For Frisco, that's a lot. They threw 2 touchdown passes in that game. Kari Green, he's a sophomore. He's a really good athlete. He's played all over the place, in his career, and now he's making this move to varsity quarterback, and he looks good. He doesn't look like a sophomore. And you have guys like Miles May, Bryson Clemens, Dante Reese, Chase Lowry. All 4 of those guys have scored rushing touchdowns this year. All those guys can be utilized in the passing game. They're used in the secondary on defense. These are the same guys that made it to the state 7-on-7 tournament, in May for the first time in school history. So this team is loaded, at least offensively, in the skill positions. They have a brand new offensive line, but they seem to be rolling just fine, and that win against Melissa looks really good right now.
It's so impressive, just considering just 2 years ago this team was 0-10, and how quickly they've recovered from that, and have just gone right back to being good old Frisco.
And they were super close to starting 0-3 last year. If y'all remember, obviously the crazy weather that was happening at the beginning of the year. In week 3, their game got delayed against Braswell, and they were losing in that game, and then their game got pushed to Saturday. They had the weird, we can't finish the game tonight, so we played Saturday, and they came back and won Saturday. So if that doesn't happen, they go 0-3, and they probably don't go on that run that they went on last year. That's what Coach Gibson told me, when I met with them at one point last year. So what a turnaround, and now here they are, potentially could go start the year 3-0.
We can come back to Frisco ISD in just a moment. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, within Plano ISD, and I guess of the instances last week of those 3 games, Plano ISD picked up its first win of the football season. They're 1-5 through 2 weeks. PISD, it's been a bit of a tricky start to the year, but it was Plano Senior though who did find the win column in one of the state's more high-profile games last week, with them squaring off against El Paso Eastwood. We've talked ad nauseum about the events leading up to that game. It was going to be just fascinating to see kind of what both teams did, not just for the game itself, because the game, they were looking to build off their first meeting last year, which was one of the most bizarre football games I've ever seen, but obviously what were they going to do beforehand as a way of honoring the victims of the El Paso shooting, as well as Eastwood football player Eddie Cruz, who passed away last week in a drowning incident. So yes, very, very heavy hearts in the Eastwood crowd. Before the game, if you haven't seen any of the stuff on social media, before the game you had students from both schools coming together at midfield to exchange gifts, and then once the football teams entered the mix, I've never seen this before, the entire team, all of Plano's team and all of Eastwood, they all gathered at midfield for the coin toss. They didn't just send out the captains, both teams are gathered in their entirety for the coin toss, and then afterwards you had players lining up next to each other along the basically spanning sideline to sideline for a moment of silence, as well as the national national anthem, and you had both head coaches kind of in the front with their hands over their hearts and whatnot. And it was just it was a really cool visual, a really nice moment of unity between the two programs. And then just talking with the coaches afterwards, Jadon McCullough and Julio Lopez, I mean, you could just sense kind of how much that whole display just kind of resonated with them, and just how much it meant to both programs to be involved in something like that, and hoping to to honor those the shooting victims the right way. And it was just a really cool display to see what they did there.
I saw on Twitter before the game, Julio Lopez gave an awesome pregame speech. I don't know if y'all saw that in the locker room.
Yeah, he's a really good interview, and just he's a very, very charismatic coach. It's and he said afterwards, it was a moment that he and his program will remember for the rest of their lives. And in the wake of, I guess, Plano and Eastwood were projected to play a couple more times in the years to come. And in the wake of the incident with Plano ISD, temporarily canceling the game and whatnot, and just that whole debacle, there was some, I guess Eastwood might have been a little reluctant to maybe keep this matchup going, but it sounds like that, at least based on just on the way that things went on Thursday night, and just the support and the showing that Eastwood received from the entire Metroplex. It sounds like it wasn't just limited to Plano. There were a bunch of programs, a bunch of area-wide businesses that really were welcoming and supportive to Eastwood in their trip to Dallas. So it does sound like we might get some more Plano and Eastwood football in the years to come. The game itself was it actually had some there was some goofiness. There was a safety that I had never seen before at the high school level, with a player catching the ball out of the end zone and then walking back into the end zone and taking a knee, not knowing that that's actually a safety. And then you had some strange officiating chaos and whatnot. But the game itself actually was a little bit more entertaining, just in terms of just sheer competitiveness, than last year's meeting was in the second half. Eastwood made a really spirited push to cut it to I guess 3-4 points midway through the third quarter, and just had all the momentum on their side. And then Plano was able to pull away with I guess 20 unanswered points, something to that tune, with what was it, 3 consecutive scoring drives, all coming on big plays. They had the deep ball working with Oliver Towns and Jaden Chambers. Tylen Hines had a big touchdown run. It was a much needed showcase of responding to adversity from a Plano team that has been a little bit rocky to begin the season, and they had their rocky moments as well. Certainly not all is fixed with Plano just by getting one win. They had some bad busts in the secondary, and just in general really seemed to struggle at the line of scrimmage on both sides. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do now heading into a game against Rowlett that has been, at least in recent years, kind of a barometer of where the season's headed for Plano. But yeah, that is at least a look at kind of what Plano Senior had to offer in its first Plano ISD's first win of the football season. As Plano East and Plano West are still trying to find the win column.
Yeah, trying to find the win column is right for especially East. West, they run that losing streak to 28 games. The Blake Short, Pierce Hudgens show at Flower Mound rolls on. Nobody expected them to go out and win that game. Hell, even 38-10, you could argue is a better result than somebody might have expected. It's not. It's a blowout, but does last West team even? Are they even that close? Do they even score 10 points? I don't know. But, that's all there really is to say about Plano West. It was an expected result against a really good Flower Mound team. Maybe a better barometer against Mesquite this week, I think. We should find out more about West. I don't expect them to go out and win that game either. It's kind of hard to expect them to until they prove that they can do it. But, I think it should be more competitive. And then on the East side, man, it's a little bit of chaos right now for the Panthers. 10 yards of offense in the first half against Lake Highlands last week. Doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Dylan Hayden, the junior transfer from Wyoming, comes in the second half and leads. I think they had 155 yards or something, which not an especially overwhelming half, but they had some fight and they showed some competitiveness and some desire to compete a little bit better than they did in the first half. Trey Jones Scott came back in the second half also. That had something to do with it, but. Quarterback job's up in the air, Plano East. It's remains to be seen if that offense is going to be able to do anything against relevant 9-6A programs. They get a Saxy team this week that I think will probably handle them, pretty easily as far as what I saw against US Trinity last week. So, PISD, man, it's no playoffs, maybe? I don't know.
That's been the rumbling. That's been the talk on social media. If this is indeed going to be the very first year ever that all 3 Plano teams miss the playoffs,
it would not shock me. It would not shock me to see one jump up and make the postseason, just because, like you said, it seems to almost always happen. But if we're sitting here come November or whatever, and there's not a PISD team in sight in the tournament, that also wouldn't shock me at this point.
I mean, we're going to make our 9-6A predictions next week on how we think the teams are going to finish in the standings and whatnot. And I want to see what week 3 brings, because I don't want to. Again, it's only 2 weeks and you can only read into so much. But
it's such a bummer that we have to do 7-5A D2 now, because I want to see one more week of those teams too. Because it's so hard with a program like Reedy, like to really believe that they're this down, but.
I think we got a good barometer of them. We've seen them play a bad team, and they struggle to beat them, and we've seen them play an elite team, and they got blown out.
Yeah.
What else do we need to see?
Yeah.
Now we just need to see them play.
We just don't know what it means against that district, and that's the thing. Because
I don't know where that district is at overall. I think Frisco is really good. I mean, that's a really good win over Melissa. But I mean, I don't know.
One area where there's not chaos right now is Prosper. They look awesome.
Yeah.
Prosper, for all the questions about just the wealth of skill position players that they graduated, they have answered those in fairly decisive fashion, as they have just beaten the brakes off of Rowlett and Keller Timber Creek to begin the season. I mean, listen, we're gonna get a much more accurate depiction of what Prosper is this week when they travel to Flower Mound.
Yeah.
But at least through 2 games, what has been your read on what the Prosper Eagles have cooking?
So over the summer, they had 2 quarterbacks, kind of fighting for that spot to replace Keegan Shoemaker. Well, Jackson Berry, who played kind of in that bulldozer role last year, he's taken over as the quarterback. He's been doing a great job. And that other guy, sophomore Tyler Bailey, they've been able to use him in other ways.
Really?
I haven't seen them live, but just based off box scores and how they utilized him and what I've seen on Twitter, he scored. He had 133 rushing yards last week. He had 4 catches for 54 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns as well. So it looks like they're throwing him in different spots. He's just an athlete. They got to put him in somewhere. But the offense is rolling. There hasn't been a lead guy like Wayne Anderson or Caleb Adams like we've seen in the past. But it's also been blowouts. So they kind of distributed the wealth a little bit. So this will be the real test for them. Facing a formidable foe in Flower Mound, and because Rowlett. They're not rolling.
Rowlett looks to be a little down, at least based on early results.
Yeah, but so they'll get a big time test, and we'll see what Prosper's really about this week.
Let's see. We can close out the first half of this podcast with a look at Frisco ISD. At the very least, at the 5A Division I level, because you got a big one coming up this week between Lone Star and Highland Park. Whether it's a read on kind of how I don't know. I mean, I don't know what we make of Lone Star and their start right now. Again, they're doing what I think is expected at this point. But whether it's Lone Star, Independence, wherever you kind of want to go, just talk a bit about Frisco ISD.
Do y'all remember last year when Lone Star was struggling offensively? Well, struggles in their terms for them, with Julian Larry.
I'd be curious what it was though those first 2 weeks against Richland and Denton.
They blew out Richland. I think it was like 42-2, and they blew out Denton. But they had some struggles on offense.
As the year went along, they did. Once the schedule thickened up a bit.
Yeah, Darren Smith was in and out of the lineup. Marvin Mims, I remember, missed a game or 2. Julian Larry was still trying to make the transition from cornerback to quarterback. I mean, he's a great player, but he wasn't that pure quarterback. And then with the news of Chandler Galban, getting injured for God knows how long with his groin, and then Garrett Rangel, sophomore, coming in, he's been lights out. He's thrown for over 800 yards in 2 games, 9 touchdowns. Marvin Mims has gone for over 200 receiving yards in both games. He has 5 touchdowns on the year. Marvin Mims may not. Well, okay, no, he's the best receiver in this. Well, him and Miles Price, but there's another receiver over at Independence to keep an eye on. His name's Keon Wafer.
Hebron. He was a Hebron transfer.
And so now he's at Independence, and according to his Twitter, he's a 3-time AAU national champion in the 400 meters.
So he's fast.
Look, he's a fast guy. He can run, and he can catch the football too. Last week against Memorial, he had 9 catches for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Wow.
He had over 200 yards in week 1 against J.J. Pierce. So I'm looking at this guy. That could be the biggest, Taylor knows I've been the biggest Braylon Braxton fan heading in, all season, heading into week 1. Braxton, man, he's thrown for 750 yards and and 9 touchdowns. A big chunk of those have been to Wafer. Wafer's got 14 of those catches for 403 yards and 6 touchdowns. So that connection right there has been just as deadly as Rangel to Marvin Mims. So right now, Lone Star is the best team in Frisco ISD. Not even a question. Independence looks like the second best team, above Reedy, above Wakelands, and all those teams in FISD. Independence looks really good with 2 blowout wins over Pierce, and then a blowout win over against a Memorial team that looked really good in week 1 when they beat Salina. But Independence, that offense is really chugging along right now.
Awesome. We've still got plenty more on the dock to talk about, including some happenings out in Mesquite and Rowlett. We'll bring on Devin, Hasson, and Taylor Raglin. You're already here.
Right here.
Kendrick Johnson. Those two to talk about their respective beats in just a moment. But first, got to shine that student-athlete spotlight, and we had Brian. You saw the Colony just laying waste to Frisco Reedy. A lot of that had to do with the playmaking of quarterback Mikey Harrington, who accounted for just a whole mess of touchdowns in that big statement victory by the Cougars. Kendrick Johnson swung by the Colony to talk with Mikey Harrington on the Colony's big win and his big season to date, and we'll see what he had to say after a word from this sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Star Local Media. 14 newspapers and websites with a print distribution of 270,000 homes and monthly page views of 600,000 online. Star Local Media, your community voice for news. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
Ken Johnson, the Colony Star senior quarterback, Mikey Harrington II. Give some insight to that big win, busting up Reedy on Friday.
All week we were preparing, working hard, coming in practice day in and day out, getting better. You know, our whole team, I feel like we all push each other to be great, and that's what leads us out onto the field.
How big a deal was to get the win, but to be able to take full advantage of that home crowd you have? Because I one of the best home crowds in the area.
Yeah. We're real big on that this year. All of the senior football players are trying to push the whole student section to come out to all the games. So that's real big for us this year.
So it's kind of cool to come out the shoe with such a big game and see them respond before you kind of get a preview of what's going to lie ahead for district.
Yes, sir.
What is y'all mentality at? Because that's y'all biggest game since being in the playoffs last year. Do y'all even talk about last year? It's kind of last year. Was that motivation for this year?
Well, losing in the first round, especially our sophomore and junior year, it's in the back of our head, and of course we want to go further than that, but like you said, that's last year. We're on to this year.
Give some insight to playing with a special player like Miles Price and all the dynamic stuff that he do. Does he amaze you when he pulls all the stuff he pulls out on Friday nights?
Oh, yeah. Like I always say, I trust Miles 100%. If I'm throwing the ball to him, every time I think he's coming down with it.
How much does he open up your offense when people try to take him out the game and they don't realize that y'all more than a one-man team?
Oh, yeah. Once teams start focusing too much on him, we got 5 other receivers that we can go to, and I trust all of them just as much as I do with him.
And how do you think you progressed from when you first got the job as a sophomore to the day that's going to come in handy when y'all get into those tough district games and hopefully if y'all see a Lone Star or somebody in the playoffs?
Yeah, I feel like it's the experience has taught me a lot. I've learned a lot throughout these last three years that's helped me on the field, and it's just I've matured over the last 3 years on the field, and I feel like that's just helping me lead the team better.
Before you got here, as you probably know that the Colony wasn't a perennial playoff team like they are now. How good does it feel like from when you first came in the Colony and to now leaving it at the standard? Like now, the standard is to get to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. How big a deal is that to have changed, been part of that big change of mentality with the results that y'all keep getting year in, year out?
Yeah, I mean, of course the goal is to make it to the playoffs, but this team and a couple years ago, or the past few teams that I've been on, we know that our goal is to get past that first round and to go deeper into the playoffs. It's never been just about making the playoffs.
So how big a deal is it to make a run, and how special would it be to make a run in your final go at this?
No, that's the main goal. I'm trying to make a deep playoff run. The whole team is. Everybody's pushing each other just as much as they push themselves, and I think that makes our team a lot better and ready for that playoff run.
Do y'all feel pressure, or do y'all feel excitement the fact that people expect y'all to put a show on offense every Friday night because your offense is so explosive?
I don't feel pressure about it, and I don't think anybody on our offense does. Coach Rangel always tells us to be the storm and to bring the game to other teams, so that's what we go in. with that mindset.
How much of a positive influence has Coach Rangel put on this program? Because like I said, I went from, the Colony, they might get in, to like now it's like, you don't want to see the Colony, you got to score 40 points to beat those guys.
Coach Rangel, that's my man. He gets us hyped up before every game. He has us hyped up at practice, and it all starts with him.
Was it a big deal? Do you think last week was a message game, or was it just another game on the schedule with them coming off the hype off last year, making a deep run, being one of the best Frisco teams in the area, or was it just another game for y'all?
People might look at it as a statement game, but to us, we came into it as just another game, just another opportunity to show what type of team we have this year.
How big it is to run the table within the regular season and hitting the playoffs undefeated?
That's the main goal, a state championship, but we're not even thinking that far ahead. We're thinking about Byron Nelson next week, or this Friday.
And what threat do they possess?
I haven't had a chance to totally look at film yet, but I heard that they have some pretty good DBs, and their defensive line is kind of nice. So it might be a challenge, but at the same time, we're gonna be prepared for them.
And what you do over the summer to adjust, so people know that people know that y'all got more than miles. People like, you gotta watch that quarterback and stuff. So how do you adjust to your game so that you have something to counter what these defenses throw at you on Friday nights?
I really wanted to work on my speed and running ability this summer, because once we spread it out, that's just going to leave the middle wide open for me and the running back to take advantage of. So I just wanted to bring that into another part into our game.
And so what have been the results on that so far?
I have one rushing touchdown so far. I'm gonna just keep doing what I do. If the coaches call a play, call my number, I'm gonna take advantage of it.
So are you gonna be shifty like Dak Prescott with that shifty zone read on them timely third downs?
If it comes down to it, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get that first down.
And how does playing against a pretty talented defense help you out as well?
Oh yeah, our defense, it really does start with them. They're giving us the ball in good field position every drive. They're bringing the momentum to our side, and without that defense, our offense might not be performing like it did last week.
And final question, get some insight to this season and all the support that y'all get in the Colony. Because I actually live in the Colony, so everywhere I go, I see Cougar Pride this, Cougar Pride that.
Yeah, it's all over. It's all over the city. There's a bunch of parents that come out that love all of us just like they love their own kids. So the support system in the city is amazing, and I love it. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
You got a message for them?
Just thank y'all, and keep doing what y'all doing. I love y'all, and y'all are the reason that we are able to play like the way we do.
Thanks again to Mikey Harrington for taking the time to chat with Kendrick for our Student Athlete Spotlight. Yes, as the Colony moves to 2-0 on the season. So guys, let's talk a little bit about the stuff in your respective areas with McKinney and Mesquite, plus the Rowlett Saxe area. We can start with McKinney North, which is off to the most McKinney North way to start a football season, which McKinney North probably on pace to set program records for both points scored and points allowed in the same year, as they come off of what had to be a deadline writer's worst nightmare, a 68-65 victory over Justin Northwest. Those two never disappoint when it comes to producing a shootout.
It's the fourth year in a row. I've been to 3 of the games, so 2 of the games that they've scored 44 points or more. Minimum, the losers had at least 44.
Oh yeah, I have it written down. This is the third time in 4 meetings that North and Northwest have combined for more than 100 points in one of their games. So going in that it's to bet the over. So
and last year was the year it didn't. It was 44-41.
Yeah, so this feels like a typical McKinney North team, Kendrick. So through 2 games, what has been your read on what the Bulldogs have shown so far?
They're gonna score a lot of points. Like literally, you're gonna have to score 40 points just to compete. But they knew that.
Teams are doing that though. That's the thing.
Yeah, that had been a problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Doesn't sound as impressed when you put it that way.
But the impressive thing about this unit is that they're very balanced. Like Dylan Markowitz threw for only 365. When you we scored 68 points, you think in today's time that's a final yard game. Manny Fincher ran for 205, only 15 carries, and they even used Braden Frazier. I don't even see him. I see how many catches he had. I think Big Frazier had. Doesn't have him. Braden Frazier has 3 catches
on the season.
So you got a 4-star commit that you're not even using yet. So that's the impressive thing. Everybody's getting involved. On defense, I can't even say nothing. I'm not trying to be negative. Like I literally saw a kid. I don't know if it was his first time out against McKinney. The ball's in the air. They face guard the ball goes over his head. He didn't even look. He couldn't even find the ball to find the guy to stop him and even make a tackle. So it's like, I don't know. I know Coach Billy Rail is a very good coach. They'll scheme and give their stuff a chance, but all the athletes are definitely on offense. This is not a mirage. They will put up 40 points a game the whole season. They've done it 6 years in a row.
But they're living dangerously. What is that? 2 wins by 5 points?
It's now
total?
yes. So they've scored 112 points through 2 weeks, and they've allowed 107. So it is a very tightrope. It is a very high wire act that the McKinney North is putting on right now.
But to put some justice to what you say, McKinney North, they have a history of doing this. The best team in program history gave up 43 points a game and scored 48 points a game. The Ronald Jones led team that Devin actually got to see play.
Yeah, that's kind of been their MO over the years. But again, it's a dangerous game to play. You know, when you can't just roll the dice when you need a defensive stop. You got to rely on your defense to get a stop. And they've been able to come out these first 2 weeks and win. But as we get deeper in the season, you got to turn to that. That defense has got to step up. And again, we're just 2 weeks in. They have plenty of time to make adjustments to get
long way to go.
Guys in. Yeah. But yeah, it's like I said, living dangerously right now.
And the game ended spectacularly. It was 66-65. They blocked the extra point and ran it back. And that's how they got 68. So a little defense was played, but it was crazy. I was at the McKinney Boyd and I thought my Marcus game. I looked at the box score at halftime. It was 45-41 at halftime, and both teams had counted for 987 yards at halftime.
I believe it, man. Those programs have shown nothing less in their I guess their 4 years playing each other. Devin, we can quickly talk a little bit of Mesquite ISD, at least at the 5A level. We're kind of on the theme of 7-5A Division I. So what has been kind of the read right now? I mean, you talk about teams that will definitely test that North, just see to what extent North can continue to win these shootouts, and Mesquite Poteet will certainly test that offense later on in the season. But as far as Poteet and West Mesquite, what has been the read early on for them?
It's been a tough start.
Yeah.
I mean, for both teams, they're both 0-2. Poteet, it looked like they started with Denton Ryan, which is just that's tough.
You know what you're going to get there.
Yeah, and it's just I thought their offense would get untracked against Waxahachie last week, and it did. They made a change at quarterback. Jalen Police started the first game. They went with Stephen Fink, who played a little bit in week 1, and he had a great first outing. Threw for 360 yards and 5 touchdowns. Can't ask for much more than that in your first game. But they're up 39-17 at the start of the third quarter. You think they're rolling right along? It's their first win of the season, and Waxahachie, to their credit, they came back. They scored 24 unanswered points. They shut Poteet out after Poteet scored 46 in the first 2.5 quarters. They shut them out for the last quarter and a half.
Wow.
Again, I think Poteet will be fine. They've gotten off some slow starts against tough non-district competition before. Seth McGowan, who did not play week 1, was back. He rushed for over 100 yards and a touchdown, had a 60-yard touchdown reception. Xavion Jeans, the guy that got actually more carries than Seth McGowan, rushed for over 100 yards and a touchdown. I think that their offense, they got that passing game going last week, but the defense is a concern right now. Same thing with West Mesquite. They lose 64-20 to Lancaster. Somewhat of a deceptive final score in terms of Lancaster scored 36 points that were non-offensive. They had 3 fumble returns for a touchdown, a kickoff return, and a punt return, and a safety. So, it's just, anytime you do that, you're not going to win. I don't care who you are. If you have 5 scores, non-offensive scores. But I think West Mesquite, again, Kevin Jennings, their sophomore quarterback, had another nice game. Ty Jordan is doing Ty Jordan things. He had a 75-yard punt return, scored 2 more touchdowns. It's alarming. Anytime you're 0-2, it's alarming. But both teams, both Poteet and West Mesquite, have played tough opponents these first 2 weeks. And gotten off to slow starts before. I think we talked about this district beforehand. I said Poteet and John Tyler. McKinney North is making a statement. John Tyler is 0-2. They're
really, what happened to them?
They lost to Tyler Lee.
I told you.
And after getting beat by Horn in the first. Now, granted, this is 2 6A programs, and again, we talked about John Tyler's losses with their skill set. But all of a sudden now, 7-5A Division I is looking very wide open with 3 district contenders at 0-2, albeit against very good competition, and then the wild card McKinney North that could beat anybody on any given night, but also lose to anybody on any given night. Hi, Sherman. And so you never can tell. So it's shaping up to be a fun district.
But I'm gonna rub my beanie and play old Johnson Thomas on you. Last night of the season, you will be at the Poteet. McKinney North came for the district title. I'll be there myself, but I have to be across town. But that's where you're gonna be at Memorial. I think it's at Hamby, and they're gonna be going for the district title. I think that's how this is gonna play out this year.
They could very well.
Let's see. You mentioned just the non-conventional ways of scoring touchdowns in that Lancaster Mesquite game.
I know where you're going.
Let's talk about the weirdest game of the week, maybe of the season. We'll see what happens. I mean, this kind of reminded me just as far as games that you're just kind of left scratching your head about. The was it the Mesquite Rockwall Heath game last year? That was the baseball score,
like 6-4.
Yeah. So
6-4.
If you have not heard as to what happened last Thursday between Hebron and Arlington Martin, this game just defied conventional football in every conceivable way. So, halftime, Hebron submitted what, talking with head coach Brian Brazel the following day, he said might have been the best defensive half he's ever seen his football team play. Like, they were that dominant against a Martin team that came in just firing away. They hung 35 on Lake Travis, and their quarterback just went to work. Hebron held Martin to negative 30 yards of offense in the first half, and was down 24-0. Hebron trailed by 24 points despite allowing negative yardage in the first half. And yes, you talk about non-offensive touchdowns, and that's what it came back on. Hebron gives up a kickoff return for a touchdown on the opening kick. Of all the kind of the lapses that they had in that first half, that was the one that Coach Brazel was really like, yeah, we just had some lazy execution there. Otherwise, other ones, it was just, because they gave up another special teams touchdown later on, and then they gave up a fumble return for a touchdown right as Hebron was going down in position to score. They got down, I want to say, inside the 10 or inside the 5, had a snap go sideways and sail over the quarterback's head, and then Martin scoops it up and takes it to the house. And just like that, you had, because Hebron sounds like at least, the process of what they were doing, at least offensively, was fine. Obviously, the defense was playing about as well as it could conceivably play. It was just, again, special teams gets overlooked in football, and just how pivotal execution there can be. And it led to what was just a really, really confounding loss between in Hebron, and a matchup between two teams that I think we figured to be, two of the better teams at the 6A level. But just what a weird result though for Hebron.
How'd you want to be that locker room unit defense? We doing all this and we still losing.
I don't even know. If you're Hebron, what do you even take away from a game like that was just so atypical and so abnormal? It was one of the games where if those two teams played 100 times, you probably get a game like that maybe twice. Once or twice. It's such a low probability contest. But yes, Hebron and Arlington Martin making a strong case for just the weirdest football game of the season. We can talk a little bit on Allen. Just a couple quick notes there. I mentioned a lot on the Rapid Reaction podcast about their start, but it is just notable though that they did schedule, probably, at least in my time covering the program, the toughest 2-game stretch to begin a season that they have in quite some time. Starting off the year against Cedar Hill and then against Dickinson, both teams ranked in the state's top 15. This is usually the part in the year where they when they play the out-of-state team from Utah or Alabama or wherever, that they end up beating by 5 touchdowns and whatnot. They do get a very, very game effort by Dickinson. Everyone in that stadium, I'm sure, was seeing Dickinson for the very first time, and they definitely were the opponent. They did run into some issues though with penalties, and they just had as the game went along, just a tougher time moving the ball. But Allen has passed its first 2 tests of the season, with 2 double-digit victories over 2 very, very quality teams. Definitely in a way kind of relaxing some concerns that I know the fan base was a little bit on high alert there after that with as tough a start to the season as Allen had on paper, coupled with just the wealth of kids lost from last year. But it's Allen, and guess what? They've reloaded, and they're still going to be pretty freaking good at football. The defense, especially the line, was the biggest takeaway from that win over Dickinson. And just, when they lost, 4 really quality starters from last season, guys that are off playing in college. But it's a unit that has traditionally been very, very well done very, very well, just because of how frequently they rotate. And you have guys that were backups that still still saw a ton of meaningful reps last season, and a lot of those guys are the ones that are now shining, the guys like Cole Latos, Michael Owenzurike. And then you have a guy like Elijah Fisher, who was an all-district tight end last season. He was moved to defensive end for this year, and he's through 2 weeks, he's got a case as maybe being the best pass rusher that we'll see in District 9 6A. I mean, you see some of the highlights, and he is just laying waste to opposing offensive lines. And I mean, he's a senior. He was all over the place on Friday, and he has had such a remarkable start to the year, despite, again, playing a brand new position. So Allen does this, though, with players like Cedric Oboihe, one of their stud linemen from way back, Greg Little, Bobby Evans, players that, I believe it was Oboihe who began his career on the defensive line, then moved to the O-line and became one of the best tackles in the state. And then guys like Greg Little and Bobby Evans were tight ends before playing varsity, and then they become, their NFL offensive linemen. So Allen has a knack for kind of knowing how to move the other puzzle pieces around and still not miss a beat. But,
and I say this every week. Wow, a school with 6,800 kids has depth.
I know.
Go figure,
it's
right?
amazing, right?
Bobby Evans has some genes. His dad's in the McKinney Hall of Honor.
Oh, yeah. Bobby Evans,
he had some genes. I think he was with Oklahoma.
He did, absolutely. Stand-up basketball player up at OU. So yes, Allen off to a typical Allen start. So that's, again, despite all the, what are they going to do and how are they going to replace this and that, and they're just fine. Again, who knows what it means once you get into November and December and whatnot, but at least early in the year, it looks like just another typical Allen team. Let's talk about Mesquite, some of the 6A Mesquite stuff. You saw Horn against Highland Park. Mesquite's got has had a nice start under Coach Fleener. So what have been some takeaways, at least at the 6A level, on Mesquite ISD, Devin?
I like to say I was at Horn and Highland Park these last few years have been a lot like Allen.
Yes.
It's just they're so well coached. That system is so well in place. They just don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
And Horn, I think they showed what they're made of in beating John Tyler on the road in the season opener. And the final of this game was 52-25. It wasn't a blowout. Horn was right there. Davizea Gabriel, their quarterback. They have Kelsey Emery, Cameron Jackson, Ben Wyatt. They've got really, really good receivers. Charles Crawford, the transfer running back. Mm-hmm. They've got weapons on offense.
Absolutely.
They're just a little bit off, but that's a credit to Highland Park. They just get enough pressure to rush a throw. And again, Highland Park just doesn't make mistakes. And when the other team makes mistakes, they capitalize on it. And I can imagine it's frustrating to watch as a fan, but as just watching it from an outside point of view, it's impressive just to see, because you can almost see it coming. As soon as Horn makes one, they don't convert on 3rd and 1, you go, okay, they're going to punt, and Highland Park's going to drive right down the field and score and make it a 2-touchdown game again. And that's what Highland Park does. But Horn is going to be, they're going to get that offense going. They're a scary offense. They're going to be able to score on anybody. Mesquite got his offense going last week. The offense didn't do much in the season opener against Highlands, but they took care against Grand Prairie is not the most stout competition, but Ladarius Turner got things going on the ground, rushed for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I think with Dylan Hilliard McGill in that passing game, they haven't been called upon to do much so far, but they're both going to be playoff contenders for sure. It's just so hard in that district saying they're going to be district title contenders, because are you ready to put them above the defending state champions in Longview or the offensive juggernaut that is Rockwall?
My God. The way that team is just seamlessly reloaded the quarterback is insane.
Yeah, with a sophomore, no way. And so I think right now you would have to put Horn and Mesquite as the front runners. Not to say that they can't challenge or even knock off a Longview or Rockwall, but it would take the perfect game at this point in time based on, I think Horn has a little bit more firepower to be able to score with those teams. I think Mesquite has by far the better defense. They've allowed 13 points in 2 weeks. But then you look at Tyler Lee. Knocking off John Tyler, they're off to a 2-0 start.
Yeah.
I think they had 15 returning starters back. North Mesquite picked up their first win over Lakeview, a Lakeview team that might contend for the 10-6A title. That's a whole different conversation as far as the strength of 10-6A goes. Yeah. But a very solid win last week by North Mesquite. And a Rockwall Heath team that's with a new coach has got a big win over Wiley. So that district is shaping up to be more interesting than we thought in terms of you still have the top tier with the 2 legitimate state title contenders. But at this point in time, I think Horn and Mesquite position themselves to be the 2 favorites to get those next 2 playoff spots. But those other 3 teams are going to have a say in the matter too.
Fight on their hands for sure. We're going to close this out, Kendrick, with a trivia question. Who is, in terms of just yardage and points per game, who is the number 1 offense in District 9 6A right now?
You said points?
Points and yards per game. I'm asking you this for a reason. It should be easy. There's really two answers.
McKinney?
I'm talking about McKinney, yes. The McKinney Lions, who, and again, it's all relative to your competition, but nevertheless, McKinney, though, has, for an offense that we had our share of questions of, like, what are they going to do at running back without Kendrick Dunn, and who's playing quarterback for them?
The answer to that question, Dave, is Lamaria Ransom. He kind of has like a battering ram style, but he's a guy that doesn't even know how good he is. I'm talking to him after the game. He says, "You think I play pretty good?" I'm like, "You ball, you get the call. I don't talk to you unless you ball." He's like shaking his head. The kid, what makes his stats impressive is he ran for 144 last week, a buck and 2 tubs, a $175 and another touchdown this week. Out of those yards, 210 have come in the second half of games and all 3 touchdowns. So that means he's wearing people out, even though he's not big and built. It's kind of like the Marion Barber style. Mm-hmm. People get tired of tackling him and taking full advantage. And another key that's going to be a key for McKinney and District is Samson Nazarko, the sophomore quarterback. He doesn't have the strongest arm, doesn't have the best arm, but he gets it there. He's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a problem come District. And the more they get more repetitions and stuff, they got the Isaiahs. They have Isaiah Rojas and Isaiah Wallace. Mm-hmm. Both spelled the same way, just different last names. They're going to be a problem too. Rojas had 4 catches, 105 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He's a very good route runner. He's the one I was telling you about with the North that made the guy didn't even know what to do. That's how good his route was. Guy couldn't even fight him. So it's going to be interesting to see how they keep this up. But their defense was lights out.
Okay.
Minus a couple penalties here and there. Coach Shavers is very upset with the turnovers. They had a stretch where they had a fumble and an interception on back-to-back plays. He's a perfectionist, but he definitely got to like what he's seeing because this time last year, they were still in what's here. This year is right here. So that PSD theory of them not making the playoffs, it's looking mighty realistic each week. And then their crosstown rivals board, they took it on the chin, but the thing about them wasn't that they lost, it was how the game played out. They were down 17-0, had 26 total yards of offense at halftime. I've been covering this program for 3 years. They're 9-21 in that span, and they're known for, I won't say laying down, but they don't fight hard. That was completely different on Friday. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Coach McBride and them did at halftime. They had their opportunities.
Witchcraft.
Carter Whitefield, the young quarterback, made 2 big turnovers, but it's one of those things like you rather make that turnover against Flatmouth Marcus than make that turnover against Prosper or Plano and it cost you a playoff spot. So in the big picture, the McKinney teams are looking good, and it might be making a little McKinney history with all 3 going to the playoffs from what I've seen so far.
We'll see what it means in a couple weeks because, again, 469 yards of offense, 45 points per game, but they played McKinney North, who we just talked about them and just their defense, plus Irving MacArthur, which, to be fair, though, that was a loss last year against Irving MacArthur. That was a very surprising loss, I'll say it that, and that was kind of a, harbinger of, okay, they're still going through some growing pains, but just in a year's time to have now turned what was a surprising loss into a blowout win shows that they can probably afford to schedule up a bit, in the years to come. But nevertheless, yes, it's been an encouraging start for that offense. We'll see, they get Richardson Pierce this week, I believe, and then the following week they open up District against Prosper. That should be a fun game, I think. That is a look at just kind of what's been shaken through 2 weeks in our coverage area. We will be back on Thursday to discuss our reader voted game of the week. Y'all can go on our website starlocalmedia.com and vote for the 5 nominees that we have up for game of the week this week. We'll preview that game and some others on Thursday. Kendrick, Devin, Taylor, and Brian back there. Everyone, appreciate y'all for tagging along, folks. You enjoy your week, and we will talk to y'all later.